Let's move to VS Code and write code for each of these data types and understand them in a better way. Now we are in the VS Code. I have made a category for data types. I have listed primitive data types here, and there are certain examples that we are going to write down to understand each of these primitive data types. As we have discussed before, we have certain types of primitive data types. I've just mentioned few of them here, like string, number, boolean, undefined and null. I will write down each of the code for the relevant examples here, and let's try to understand these data types one by one. The first data type is string. To understand that, let us create a data type whose format is string. So let me create a variable called name and assign it a value. The value is my name, that is Anirudh Pednekar. And now let me go ahead and create a console to that, which is going to help us print out the value. Let me go ahead and print out the value. To run the program, we'll have to use the node engine and write down the file name, that is index.js. You can see that the response that we are getting here is Anirudh Pednekar. Now that we are able to print the name here, let's also try to understand if this type that we are using is of the type string. To do that, let us write another console and let's use one more operator called typeof, and let's use the variable name. Typeof is an operator in JavaScript which helps us to understand what type this variable is. So I want to know what type the variable name is. So let me rerun the program. You can see that the name is there in the output and also the type. You can see that the type is string here. Coming to the next example of number, let us create a variable of type number and let's try to analyze the type there. Let me create a variable called age and let me assign the value of 50 here. I also want to make sure that this type is of number, so let me use the typeof operator again and let me print the type of this variable age. So let's go to the console and use the node engine again and run the index file. You can see that the output here is number. You can use another comma here and also print the variable and rerun the file. You can see that the type is first printed since we have asked it to print first, and then the value of the variable, that is 50, which we had assigned here. Coming to the next data type, that is boolean. So let me create a boolean variable and let's try to understand if that prints out the right type. Let me create a boolean variable called isTrue and let's assign a value to true. Now let's go ahead and print this variable isTrue that we have created. Let's again use the typeof operator on the isTrue variable. I'm going ahead and running this particular file. You can see that the output is true since the value that we have assigned is true, and the type of this particular variable is boolean. So that is how the primitive type boolean works. Coming to understanding of the next primitive data type, that is undefined. As I had already said, if any variable is just created and if not assigned, its default value is undefined. So let me go ahead and create a variable called address, and I am not declaring any variable value here. So address is just declared and not initialized. Well, address. So I am using the console.log and I am printing the variable address. I am rerunning the file. You can see that the output of this particular console is undefined. Since we have not initialized any value to address, its initial value is undefined. Similarly, if you just went ahead and initialized its value to null, and if you go ahead and run the file, you can see that its initial value is null. This is the basic difference between null and undefined. The next data type that we are going to discuss is the non-primitive data type, also called as reference data type. As I had already mentioned in the previous section, that objects or array contain collections of multiple data types. It can be collection of primitive data types, or it can be collection of similar kind of data types which are of type primitive. So now in this particular code, let's try to understand what objects and arrays are. Let's use them and understand them with one example each. The first example that we are going to consider is object. So let's go ahead and create an object. Let me consider a variable called details, which is of type object. So this is how you declare an object. In this variable details, I am going to declare details of myself. So my name, my age, and my address. As I had already said, objects are in key value format. So the key here is name, the key over here is age and the next key is address. The name here is of type string and its value is Anirudh, followed by a comma. That is how you separate each of these key values. The next key value is age, which is of type number, and I've given a value to it as 50. The next key value, that is address, and its value is India. So this is how you declare a variable of type object. Now if I go ahead and print this particular object, you are going to get the details of the variable that we have created. You can see that it's printed the entire object. If I go ahead and create another console to understand the type of this particular object that we have created, and let me go ahead and print this again, you can see the first output is the object itself and the next is the type, that is the object. So this is how you create an object. You assign multiple values of different primitive type. Here I have used string, here I have used numbers, here I have used string again. So this is how you declare objects. The next data type that we are going to discuss in non-primitive is the array. Array is similar to object, but object has a key value format, but array does not have a key value format, and it is slightly different in the way we are declaring arrays. So let us go ahead and understand with an example over here. Let me create the same variable that we had created for object. Let me name it as details, and this is how you write an array within brackets, within square brackets. So the first value of this array is my name, that is of type string, and the second value is my age, and the third value is going to be my address, that is India. So array also has multiple primitive data types here. Like you can see, we have two strings and one number here. It is similar to objects where it can hold multiple values of the same primitive data type or different primitive data types in the same particular variable that we are declared. Arrays are similar to objects. The only difference here is its declaration. Objects follow key and value format, whereas in arrays you can directly define these values. It is similar to objects where you have option to add multiple values of either same data type or different data type and assign it to the same variable. Here we have created a variable details, assign multiple values to it. It has three values. One is my name, the next one is the age, and the third one is the address. So this is just an example that I have considered to explain what arrays are. This is not a super solid way of writing arrays that we are going to discuss in future. This video is just to understand the basics of what objects are, what arrays are, what are the different types of data that you can use. You can modulate that data or reuse that data. I hope this video was useful to you and it gave you a basic understanding of what data types are. So let me recall what we have studied so far. We understood what data types are, how data is important, how we can manage data in multiple ways, and what are the different types of data that we use in our day-to-day lives. In JavaScript, we discussed what JavaScript data types are. We understood what primitive data types are, what non-primitive data types are. In primitive data types, we understood what strings are, numbers are, booleans are, undefined or null variable is, how to declare an object in non-primitive data type, how to declare an array in non-primitive data type. So now we know what data types are, how we can use them in JavaScript,